Hello. Okay, microphone works. Okay. I have a lot of slides. We don't have much time. I'm also very, very tired because I came just yesterday and I slept like 4 hours and some hours on the plane. And you know, plane flights is never good sleeping. You just drool on yourself and you just died dead there in the water. Talking about the water, I want to talk about today a bit about how we go a bit overboard with the JavaScript that we're doing right now. Because JavaScript has been such a massive success the last few months that we all get very excited about it, and I find it kind of frustrating how people feel out of sync or feel not appropriate anymore, and how the JavaScript community becomes a bit arrogant and aggressive. And I think it's not necessary that we do that to ourselves or to other people. As we've been asked to introduce ourselves a bit to the camera and the recordings, I'm going to talk a bit about myself, but it's not going to be the normal like, hi, I'm here and I'm sorry that it's me. But I want to give you a bit of a frame of mind why I came to be who I am here and why I think that we're going a bit overboard. So I'm Chris Heilmann, I'm at CodePoet on Twitter, so if you don't have enough hedgehogs, fluffy animals, and JavaScript information in your world, you can always follow me there. I think 51,000 people do that right now, so don't be surprised if there's a lot of answering and stuff going on, and I don't know why people do it, but it seems some of the things I do are interesting. I live in London, England, and this is what my street looked like last week. Basically grim and terrible. That's why we do so many things with computers. Most of the time it rains. That's when people start drinking and fighting. That's why you stay inside and write JavaScript instead. It was also 7 degrees, and now it's like 24 here or something, and I'm just going in between. I'm going to Thailand after this and Sydney because they're going to try out what happens when you put redheads in the sun. And then I go back to England and go to Finland after this. So if I not get a cold, it's going to be a very big surprise. I've been a developer, writer, presenter, trainer, and manager, and all of this is because I know JavaScript. And I think it's very important that all of us here start thinking about that sooner or later you're going to be as old as me, your hair is going to fall out, you're going to not have fun in life any longer, and you're going to think about your long-term plan of what you're doing. So thinking about I'm the best engineer on this planet and I'm going to do that for the next 50 years is not a good plan. But as we build a community around our technologies and as we work in a medium, which is the internet, and we don't work just in a software platform, we have a chance to be all these kind of people. So in 2004, I wrote this unobtrusive JavaScript tutorial, how to write JavaScript that is not in the way of your end users. In 2006, I wrote my first book. I think I published or written in 8 books so far or something like that, and thousands of articles, basically because when I write things down, I remember them. My blog started as a scratch pad for my ideas because I wanted to remember them, which is very, very annoying. I forget something and I go to Google and I find my own blog as the first result because I just realize I get forgetful, but this is what we all do. So I worked in several companies and large corporations, and I worked with JavaScript in all these corporations and did things to scale and did things to different audiences, to different markets, and I found out that way that JavaScript is a very, very cool and versatile thing. I worked for Yahoo, and I worked on the YUI library, I worked on Yahoo Maps, I worked on Yahoo Answers, and there you hear things like, oh, we got 3,000 people a second. What do we do about this in terms of architecture? And we're like, okay, let's try that out. Then I worked for Firefox, and I worked on Firefox OS, which was very, very low-level devices that were running an operating system written in HTML5 for a market that is not in the Silicon Valley and it is not rich kids. And now I'm working for Microsoft and work on the new Edge browser because I basically realized that Internet Explorer is the reason for all of our unhappiness, and I should be in the company that built that thing and replaced it with something good, and that's what we did right now. Always go for the source. Don't go for fighting symptoms. Find out, if you're sick, find out what made it happen, not take painkillers and hope it's going away. So that's what I did with Microsoft, and I'm very happy about that. And I use JavaScript in many, many different environments. Authoring websites and enhancing them with JS is, of course, the first thing. That's why JavaScript came around, and that's why JavaScript was used. And I think it's very important to realize that enhancing them with JS is a big, big thing here. Because websites are more than a JavaScript construct. Websites are HTML, CSS, images, writing, accessibility, UX, These are things that are publications on the web, and the web is an undefined environment. I cannot control anything that our end users are doing. So if it runs fast on my machine, well done. If you're your only user, that's great. But think about the people who are out there as well. We also had scripting and extending applications that started with Illustrator. I wrote JavaScript in Illustrator. That was possible in '99. And then Homesite was my big editor back then. It was written in JScript, which was a terrible thing that should have never happened, but did. Then Visual Studio Code, for example, now came out yesterday as open source. Atom is another JavaScript editor that is written in JavaScript with Node. And Sublime Text has all kind of extensions that you can write with it as well. So we wrote in environments like applications before and for the web. And these are two different environments and two different rules and two different best practices applied to those. Authoring reusable widgets for people who don't know JavaScript. I mean, later on this became jQuery plugins, but before that we had like DHTML drop-down menus in these wonderful things. Like when you got like 600 pounds for 40 lines of JavaScript that when you look at them now you want to kill yourself. Working on libraries and frameworks, on YUI, on jQuery, on Dojo, on all these things that came and went. When I wrote for Ajaxian as a blogger, at one time there were 412 different DOM libraries that all made Ajax easy. Now we have, what is that, 180,000 NPM modules that make everything easy as well. It might be a different world that we're living in right now, but also we write a lot of code that other people will never use. Working on browsers and JavaScript engines gave me a lot of insight how JavaScript is actually going into the computer, how it's turned into bytecode, what the browser does to us, and what we do terrible things to the JavaScript engine and then blame the browser makers that they write crap code. And working on server-side JavaScript using Node.js, this is a really, really great thing, that we can now write a server with a few lines of code, and we can host the thing in the language that we've done before. I moved most of my PHP work to Node because it's just easier for me to do nowadays, although it's damn easy to get a PHP server, not as easy to get a Node server going. And designing APIs for JS consumption as well. When I worked on Yahoo YQL or on pipes, and I helped people like encoding.com, Spotify, and all those people that want to talk to JavaScript developers, how do you define an API for JavaScript developers? All of that taught me that JavaScript is a versatile, creative, and easy to learn pick-and-mix environment. It is basically, it's a sweet shop. It's a beautiful thing because you can use that language for almost anything. And when you use it, you apply it in a certain way. You don't apply it in just one way to rule them all. But we keep treating JavaScript like a one-size-fits-all environment that we can control. It works for me. All our users should have the newest browser as well. All of our users should actually have a faster computer because it's their fault that my code is slow. And we're like this kid. We just scream and shout at each other, and we scream and shout about everything that we use while we're actually having incredibly good hardware and incredibly good development environments. When I look at DevTools of Chrome or DevTools of Firefox and soon DevTools in Edge, I'm just amazed what we can do nowadays, what kind of insight we get, and still we're saying like, oh, this is not as good as the other environments, although most of us never looked at the other environments and just looked under the hood just how horrible Android and iOS is as well. Because it's software. It's written by humans. It's written by people like us who just clean over things and then like, look, it's working. I'm not want to look at it anymore. And I think lately we go overboard with JS. We just try to do everything with JS, and we get terribly excited if it works, and we get terribly disappointed if not everybody is with us on that same boat. We're going full speed on innovation. I'm not going to go into these in details, but if you subscribe to Echo.js or you go to Hacker News, every day there is some new thing. Every 3 months, one of the large corporations will have some great new thing that will be the future of the internet, and then half a year later we won't hear about it any longer. And all of these things are incredibly important things. They're incredibly intelligent things, very well architected things, but many of them are also like, is it really necessary that we all play on the bleeding edge? Because the bleeding edge is about this wide. We would fall over if all of us played there. And it's bleeding, so it's hurtful. So the code that is on the bleeding edge should not hurt our users, but should move us forward. So we should find time and space to use it, and not just say, this is the bleeding edge and it's now the reality. It's a vicious innovation cycle. Developers don't use features until browsers support them, and browsers don't add new features unless there's demand and use in the wild. This is how every browser maker prioritizes new features. Do people really use these things? Oh, no, they don't, so we don't have to have them. And it's a very important thing because browsers are also software developers. It's a finite number of people. Even the open source ones have a finite number of people working on those things. So that cool new feature that you really want, is it necessary? Is somebody using it? No. We all know that app cache is broken. It's a terrible thing. Jake Archibald said it's the end of the world and it kills kittens and all kind of stuff. And then when you send out the Bing crawler, Bing is a search engine, you can Google for that if you don't know it, and we look at the standards inside Firefox, we found out that hardly anybody, including applications, used an app cache. People just saw it's broken and never tried it out. So at the same time, we just had this like, oh, we're not going to touch it because it's so terribly broken. I tested it myself. No, you didn't. You're lying. Because otherwise it would be on the web somewhere. And developers just want the new shiny things rather than demanding the things that are broken. Form elements are still terrible across browsers. You cannot style select boxes. You cannot, a date picker doesn't work on all browsers the same way. And that's fine. They can work differently, but they should work and not just be something that is in the browser because it's there. We should demand more that the basics of HTML5 is working before we're going for the next feature out there. And we force rules onto ourselves that might be overkill. I love this blog post the other day. That's the checklist for a new open source JavaScript project. Please follow these steps. And you know, if I were now somebody coming from university, I've never been to university, but if I were somebody coming from school and saying like, I want to learn something about that computery thingy where all the jobs are and people get money, and I get this instead of like, here's the SDK of iOS, I probably would go for iOS as well, because that is too much. All of these things are important, all of these things are well architected, all of these things are beautiful, but putting them all together is just shocking new people and stopping them from getting into the market, because this is not inviting. This is just telling people, here is how it has to be done. And this is why I left Germany and moved to England, because in Germany everything is this is how it has to be done. We live in a hype-fueled environment. We don't even want to deliver things anymore. We just get excited about ourselves. The tech press has nothing else to write about but JavaScript and developers at the moment. Almost every tech company sees developers as the audience that we try to get to, because the audience for our users of our products, that's stuff that happens magically, or so we hope. But developers are the most expensive thing to get right now and the hardest thing to get as well. We're the only market where there's more jobs than people, for now. There will be a crash. There was a crash in 1999 when I lived in Los Angeles. It will come again. It cannot be retained. Something like $18 billion for a company that allows people to send emojis to each other. There's something going wrong there. But right now, we are basically up in demand and people really, really want us. And it's all about hype. It's instead of saying like, okay, I want to build something beautiful for you that's maintainable, I'm like, I can make you the coolest, newest thing using these 12 frameworks. Like writing that you know about UX, that you know how to make an accessible web app on your CV will get you much less than saying like, I know the framework so-and-so that's right now in half the demand. I love these LinkedIn invites when people ask for 3-year experience of half-year-old libraries. But that's a sign of that hype that we're having right now. We're just trying to impress each other, and the tech press is just making everything amazing. You know, everything is like, this is the new library, it does this, it's only so small, it's so amazing, it does this and this and this and this. Don't use in production. So what do we use it for? Like impressing each other, playing with it at home? This is not really what we're going to do. We're impressing one another rather than building things for the outside world. And this is most of the time people like to quote Moore's Law. And this is a bit paraphrased. It's normally about semiconductors and pricing of those. Computers get faster, better, cheaper, and more available every 2 years. And I hear that every time when something is slow, yeah, but the new iPhone is coming out, it will be fine then. You know, because my JavaScript library is probably the thing you want to buy an $800 phone for, so it actually works faster. And everybody just expects continuously people to upgrade their computers because we do. We work with amazing hardware. Most of the companies are not flinching anymore when I say, like, I want to get a MacBook Pro. I got a MacBook Pro from Microsoft when I joined them as my computer, and a Surface 3 to test things out, because they know not everybody uses Windows in the developer world, and I used the Mac before, so I wanted to stay with that as well. We have phones that are amazing. We get test phones. We get to try things out. We also work with amazing connectivity. Like, compared to the outside world there, and I staying in hotels a lot, I know how bad connectivity can be, and living in England at times as well. We work with great connectivity, and why does that blink? Anyways, we work with great connectivity in an environment where we don't even know what offline is anymore. And most people out there don't have that. We get paid well for a job that we like to do. And start talking to people outside our market if they get paid for the job that they like to do, or if they have more fun in their free time and they just go to work to make money. And that's something we should never forget, how lucky we are, how amazingly lucky we are that we get the freedoms that we have. The problem is, though, that we assume all the things that we have, other people have as well. We work with these beautiful browsers, and all of them are amazing. Yes, even the ones on older Androids. Yes, even Safari. Yes, even no, Internet Explorer is dead. Edge is great. All these browsers come with amazing tools, and all these browsers have at least a baseline that we can now work against. And when I started as a web developer, that baseline wasn't there. That's what we fought for. This is what the web standards movement was about, that browsers follow standards and compete on the UX and compete on the features that are for end users and not on the engine that drives those browsers. When we talk about Moore's Law, we have to talk about May's Law, which is again paraphrased, but it says software efficiency halves every 18 months, compensating for Moore's Law. Meaning the longer you maintain a piece of software, the bigger it gets and the slower it gets, and we all been there. I love that it's 2 years for hardware to get faster and 18 months for software to get slower, so somewhere we're losing 6 months all the time. So in essence, we move fast and we run in circles because we have good stuff and we put more things in, and then we wait until the hardware catches up again, and then we write more stuff again. I talked earlier to somebody outside. I know that with hard drives. You know, you upgrade your hard drive from 100 gig to 250 gig, and then like, oh, that's going to last me for the next 3 years. 4 weeks later, there's like 10 gig left. And you're like, what did I do? Yeah, 6,000 NPM modules, 1080 resolution movies instead of 720 resolution. We're digital hoarders. We love to fill things up because we might need it later on. The same way in our products, we use all the things that in the future our users might want to have rather than building something simple and making it after feedback from the users, making it better. The web is in a sorry state, and that is really annoying me because the web made my career. I don't have a job education, I didn't finish university. Without the web, I would be probably, I don't know what I was doing, dancing at cafes or something. The median web page time to interact is 5.5 seconds and fully loads in just over 15 seconds. And that was an analysis by Web Performance Daily have been done there. The median web page is 2 megabytes in size and contains 170 resources. It's as if like we didn't have any performance information or training or tools in browsers for years and years. Who builds this stuff? It cannot be us, because we learn all these cool things here, right? It must be some idiot that does it differently. But it's us. It really is over time, because we move on to the next library that we try out, and we move on to the next project that we want to have. And we leave companies when the software becomes unmaintainable and we don't want to keep it any longer. And then instead of fixing it when we go to a new job, we just show them the new framework that we came with that will make everything better again, right? Waiting isn't fun. It's not fun to look 5 seconds on your phone. People don't do it. They basically, after 2 seconds, on the phone we have much less patience than we have on the desktop. On the desktop you got 12 tabs open, you go to the other tab, you look at fluffy kittens, and you come back to the other one that loaded. On the phone you're like, I'm gonna kill you, or like, is it disconnected again? The amount of times I call my ISP that something is wrong, whereas in reality it was just the website slow, yeah, well, they deserved it. It's especially annoying when it costs you. I just arrived yesterday, and 3, my provider in England, says it's a max of £2 a minimum to call, £1.25 to receive a call, £6 per megabyte to use the web and email. This means the average website is the same price as a ticket for the cinema. So I really hope that your website is entertaining enough that I don't watch Spectre or something instead of watching your website for £12. How does this happen? What's going on here? How do we fill up that web? Why is that happening all the time? I think it's because we keep projecting. We're technically proficient. We know our stuff about computers. We have interest in change and upgrades. A new browser comes out, we download that thing. A new operating system comes out, unless it's OS X, we upload it immediately. I don't know. Is it the same with you? Like as soon as the news is out, the other one becomes really unstable. I don't know what they're doing, but fair enough. We have interest in spending money on the web and for web services because we live off the web, so we also spend money on there. And we expect our audience to do the same thing. They always have the newest computers, they always upgrade the operating system, they make every security patch out there, and that's basically why we have such a wonderful symbiosis with our users and we never hate them. The reality is kind of different. First of all, the last thing, the interest in spending money on the web for web services, doesn't apply to us because we want everything for free. We all have ad blockers installed because we're not stupid. You know, the other people are the ones that click on ads. You know, like why would I do that? I love that AdBlock Plus has been bought by somebody and nobody knows who. And that was like 4 months ago. It could be the mafia, it could be the triads, it could be NSA, or worse, the American government. Anybody could have bought these things, and that's on all of our computers and spies on us because we don't want to see ads. I think it's time for a reality check. This is us in the middle of it. We don't spend money, but we're technically proficient, we're interested in change, we upgrade all the time. We work for an assumed audience that actually spend money on the stuff that we do and keep upgrading their computers all the time and know what a computer is and know that a database error on the page is not their problem but our problem. In reality, our audience is more or less there because it's a numbers game. It's the people that we never see are the people that click on ads. The people that we never see are the ones that download a new game where you put two colorful, fluffy things together that make a bing sound that costs you $12. Those are the people that pay for the web. And I'm not saying that they're stupid, they just don't care. And even more so, they don't care nowadays anymore because internet and computers has become plumbing and water. It's become a thing that's just there. People don't know what offline is, or they don't know what a computer, what a browser is. They just click on a thing and go somewhere. On the mobile phone, the browser is the last app that you open when you're bored of all the other ones. The next users, though, are not those who complain that the web is not as good as native apps. Bruce Lawson at State of the Browser and some other conferences gave this great talk, Ensuring a Performant Web for the Next Billion People, where he shows you numbers about where the growth is, where the next users are, the next real billion people are. And it's actually in your neighborhood here, like Indonesia, India, Africa. These are the markets that are coming right now, and these are not the bored people. These are the people where the internet, access to the internet, makes a difference to them, where the internet is a teacher, where the internet is an education tool, where the internet means that they will have a business or don't have a business. And this is something we should think about when we start putting all the cool new technologies into our products because we like to. Because Moore's law stopped working when we hardwired hardware and software. This is the phone that my hotel gives me here for free, and for some reason it calls me Mr. Bachelor. I don't know why. It's an Android phone that has a SIM card in here that I can use. I think it's great service. Thank you so much. But this Android gave me like flashbacks from Google I/O 6 years ago or something. Because it's a really, really old, small device that never has been upgraded because it cannot be upgraded because it's too slow for the newer Android version. And the browser in there is something that is like done by full moon by two werewolves and an old fork of WebKit or something that is just shouldn't be in use. But this is the browser and will stay the browser of those till the end of time. And everybody who goes into that hotel will get that browser. And there's nothing we can do about that. We can stand on our head and scream that they should have the newest, coolest thing because I want to have service workers. But these phones are out there and they will stay out there for quite a while because we hardwired operating system and browser, which is the stupid idea that Microsoft did in the 90s but now finally gave up as well. As developers, we're always asked to do the impossible. That's our problem as well, because we're still so far removed from the people who pay us money or from the people who run the projects that we're doing. They always ask us things that we cannot do, and we're just too proud to tell them that we can't do them. We just say, okay, yeah, fair enough, I can do that. Make it work the same in every browser. That's pointless. That's like saying make your car drive the same speed underwater as on the motorway. A good website looks different and works different according to the environment that it's actually used in. That's the power of the web. That's the power we have over native environments. Make it easy to maintain, and we want to control everything. It's like, we want to have a CMS, but we also want to control the color of every different letter in our logo, please. Like, what? That's where it becomes complex again. Make sure that it's accessible. I think there's a law we need to follow. Nobody cares about accessibility because of people. They just don't want to get sued. And that's a cynical argument, but I've seen it far too often, sadly enough. Don't spend too much time on it. Let's release it now and fix it later. That's the biggest lie, followed by I read the terms and conditions. Fix it later never comes. Fix it later means you put things on the web that you're embarrassed about, and you will never get the chance to fix. Use this analytics code you have no clue about. We need to know how people use our products. Like, great that your JavaScript is fast. Here's 12 analytics beacons that really slow down the thing. Just find the right bricks and assemble something great. There's so many tools out there, 150,000 NPM modules. Why do you even write code any longer, right? What does this code do? It looks quite complex. It looks quite amazing. It's minified, of course. That's a good thing. Any guess? It's the follow me on Twitter button. This is the code that is on the Twitter website to copy and paste. So it's progressively enhancing a link, so that's pretty cool. But this is the code it generates. And this is not because Twitter hates users. This is because Twitter needs to make this thing work in every environment possible and just don't want to think about it and put like lots of polyfills and all kind of things in there. And this is just painful. You know, this is like, if that's where we are, then we forgot to move the platform with us, and we forgot to feed back to browsers what we really need. The amazing tech of today is the rubbish of tomorrow. And I see that a lot right now, because working for Microsoft and working on Edge, we have this wonderful site scanning tool. That one, you put your website in and it shows you what you're doing wrong with your website, that you're using WebKit only CSS, that you're using jQuery 12 times where 4 times would be enough, that you're using a attach event that's not necessary anymore. Of course, Add Event Listener works on every browser nowadays. It's a really nice tool to show enterprises and show companies what they're doing wrong with their website. It's also on GitHub, so if you find a bug in it or you want to run it behind your firewall, as a lot of our clients are doing, you can do that. I think my favorite quote that I heard from one of the clients was, a simple way to detect how old a part of our massive website is checking which version of jQuery was used in that part of it. It's like rings in a tree trunk. So they found like 16 different versions of jQuery on their website because different departments built different parts of their website and didn't talk to each other and didn't point to some CDN-hosted jQuery that could be cached and could be evergreen, but everybody just bundled it in and threw it in there because nobody sees that, right? We break the web for the sake of developer convenience. This is the experience that the web gives me a lot, like waiting for random stuff. And when there was a JavaScript error in the background and they don't have an event handler of the error case, this is forever and ever and until I reload the page and thought it was my browser or something like that. How many tutorials do you see where it's only the success case? The error case is the most important thing. This is where you piss people off. You make it as never blame the user for something like that. Never let them wait endlessly. Show them like, something went wrong, your data is safe, we're trying again. It's our fault, sorry for this. This is the only thing that you can do here. But we always get like, well, they were reloaded, don't worry about that. There's a great read and talk video by Paul, what's his name again? Paul Lewis from Google. It was at Full Frontal last week. And the post was like 3 days ago. It's the cost of frameworks, and it's all about ergonomics versus user needs. And I found that exciting to talk to him about that because I had these things before. He collected a lot of data about these problems. So one thing he looked at is that everybody uses virtualization and uses a framework because the DOM is slow. The DOM is terrible. We needed jQuery because the DOM was impossible to use, and reading and writing from your HTML all the time is slowing things down. In the React documentation, it says the bottleneck is almost always the DOM mutation and not the JavaScript execution. So Paul Lewis said, like, okay, let's throw that to a test and see what's coming out there. So he built this website using Angular and using React that just loads pictures from Twitter. from Flickr. And each of these pictures, like 5 DOM elements, because that's the documentation or the descriptions there and the link. And then he started looking. He started a timer when the page loads until the framework kicks in, and then he finishes the timer, and then it starts writing out the HTML and starting to position the pictures and stuff, and then the second timer finishes. And what he found out was really interesting, that the more pictures you have, the longer, of course, it takes. We all know that. More HTML, not a good idea. But what he found is that the rendering and the DOM manipulation stayed more or less the same. Whereas the JavaScript execution in a framework that reads all these things and then turns them into a virtualized DOM and writes them out there is becoming bigger and bigger. Like 1.5 seconds at the end of it when it came to like 1,500 pictures. 150,000 pictures, something like that. Anyways, he realized that the DOM manipulation is slow, but it stays the same. Whereas the JavaScript execution, if you do clever things to your things before you render them out, becomes bigger and bigger because the objects internally take more memory, it takes more computation, these kind of things. He even found, more interestingly, that when you do vanilla JavaScript without the library, the more pictures you did, it started evening out and it started actually becoming faster again because the browser caches stuff for you. The JavaScript engine reuses things that are already been there and they're like, okay, I know this. I don't have to touch it anymore because it hasn't changed. Whereas like doing clever things in your library means like you start from scratch every single time again. So we need to learn in these libraries to do the same kind of caching. If you read the same DOM element in jQuery 16 times, it should come from a cache and not be read from the document again. But this is very interesting that we optimize the JavaScript engines for these end cases, and we don't get these end cases any longer because people think JavaScript engines are too slow from the very beginning, and they're not. Browsers do an incredibly amount of work for us, and we always just complain when something is broken. If you think about it, and you work with browser makers, they display all kind of media content. Like, how many images out there are in the wrong format with the wrong file name and the wrong MIME type, and the browser will still show them? People can put bitmap, BMPs on the web, and the browser will render them instead of hurting those people, which would be the right thing to do. It fixes minor mistakes in our code. You don't close a p tag, the browser closes it for you. We gave up on developers. We just expect you to do mistakes, and the browser should fix it for us. And this is called like good programming nowadays or something. We optimize our code to run smoothly. The amount of stuff that the Chakra JavaScript engine does to for loops by reading through them and seeing if there's a function called and embed that function into the other one before creating a binary code from them is quite impressive. It provides us with developer tools. We have full insight over what we're doing, but we're still complaining that it's probably the browser that's slow, and it's very easy to point out that it was our mistake and that it was just bad rendering, thrashing of the layout, yank kind of things because of that. They provide us with deep insights what our code does to the computer. We got heap analysis, how much RAM we used, how much CPU we're using. When I started with JavaScript, I had not even an idea what the CPU would be like. I couldn't even test it in the operating systems back then, but now we have it in the browsers. It allows us to automate testing on them and debug remotely on devices we don't even own. We can use third-party services like browser tests and browserling and all these kind of things to access an iPhone in America and that connectivity and get the report back how our JavaScript performed there. How awesome is that? And yet we want to have every browser on our machine and test it there rather than just using these kind of wonderful environments. Paul built a great thing called BigRig, which takes a scanner file, either from Chrome or from webpagetest.org, and it shows you what was going on, how much memory was consumed, what the CPU was doing, where your time went, and where your computation went. And using this, you can actually tweak your applications and realize where the real bottlenecks are instead of just complaining about that it's the DOM. It was very interesting. You used the to-do MVC application and then used different libraries and compared them with each other, how much they're in size and how much they're in bootstrap time, and on an N5 and an iPhone 5S. And he found out that some of them took up to 2 seconds before they started rendering the first line. And this is all JavaScript execution. This is not like talking to the browser and all kind of things. This is the libraries themselves, because we want to use them and it makes it easier for us as developers. But these are 2 seconds and lots of battery and lots of time on users' machines that they shouldn't have to use because we want to write 3 lines of JavaScript instead of 50. It's not about how many lines of JavaScript you write, it's how your code behaves at the end user's computer, because these are the people we work for. We don't work for other developers unless you write developer tools. We work for people out there, and they shouldn't have phones that their battery dies because we have a memory leak in the background. Fixing everything with a lot of JavaScript helps us, but not necessarily our audience. JavaScript has become this duct tape of the web. Like, if something's wrong, we do it with JavaScript, because then we got full control over it, and we not at the mercy of those stupid browsers and those terrible environments. We just can do everything ourselves because we're infallible and we're the cleverest people on the planet. We all know that. So we should worry a lot more about cost. And costs, and Paul talked about this as well, cost for developers is learning new frameworks. Like every month there's a new one, and we want to have it on our CV, so we have to look at it. And then version 2 is completely different to version 1, so we have to relearn them and find out what changed and why is it breaking out of a sudden. Because frameworks is software as well. That's the same problems that we have. It's people writing these things. Debugging frameworks, where did this error come from? It's obviously not in my code, but the framework does something wrong. So can you debug the framework? Do you understand what the thing is doing, or do you just have to wait until there's a patch and you go back to your client? Well, we have to wait 3 weeks, sorry about that. I hope you can pay us for the 3 weeks while we're not doing anything. Setting up developer environments. So it's like, this is easy. Go to the command line, type these 12 things in, wait for 15 minutes of NPM with 200 warnings, and then everything will be fine. Or like, oh, you need a MacBook Pro to run this JavaScript. No, sorry. And cutting down on possible hires and adding to onboarding time. If your company subscribed to I don't know, blah blah framework so and so, you only can hire people that are happy to use blah blah framework so and so, and you actually cut down on those people. And those most of the time are the more expensive ones as well. The real important bit is the cost for our end users. Time to load and execute, the bandwidth used, you remember, £6 per megabyte, CPU usage, the frame rate. If it's less than 60 frames per second, and we had that in the first talk today, it feels icky. People will complain that it's not fast, no matter how fast it really is. Memory usage, because memory is not endless as well, and that actually ties into battery life as well. If your website sucks my battery dry, that's not a good service. It's time to clean up and learn the basics. I love that by Magna, the post yesterday. Find meaningless code. Why was it put there? Future-proofing. Rip out the code. The future is here, and it's not happy with your proofing. We are crap at predicting the future. We really are. If we were, we could play the lottery and don't have to work anymore. But all of our code, our clever code, predicts problems of the future. Wait until the problems are there and write code for now that is fast, small, and behaves really well on our end users' computers. Worry about the problems that are coming with scale when they're coming. There's nothing worse. When you have lots of users and it gets slow, that's a good problem to have because those users pay money. Then you actually get paid to fix these things rather than hoping the future will come. The JavaScript learning process has always been kind of interesting. What do? We use view source to see what other people are doing. Then we copy and paste the bits that look like they're responsible for some things. Then we change some numbers around, we run into errors, and we blame Internet Explorer. That was back then. Now, of course, now we're all like full-stack developers and whatever we call ourselves right now, so we're much more professional. So nowadays, we search for a solution on Stack Overflow. We copy and paste the bits that look like they're responsible for some things. We change some numbers around, we run into errors, and we blame JavaScript for being a terrible and not a real language. And we blame Internet Explorer for good measure. We're running out of both excuses. First of all, Internet Explorer is dead. Windows 10 is the operating system. There's a free upgrade. The browser is evergreen like all the others. I love that at the MVP Summit, unattended laptops will be upgraded to Windows 10. JavaScript grew up as well. ES6 is here. It's a ratified standard. ES 2016, 2015 is not. ES6 is ratified. Since June, we have a standard, and it's not the what is JavaScript anymore. It's ECMAScript 6 is here, and it's backwards compatible and has a lot of good changes in it. The support is encouraging. We got Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari on iOS 9. Safari is really, really good. And that's uncommon, because a lot of other things, Safari is not as good any longer, and they're not as fast as implementing because reasons. There's a compatibility table at Kangak's website. It's really, really good for finding out what's going on. Some numbers: Edge is 80%, Firefox 42 is 71%, Chrome is 63%, Android 29% and 54%. So a lot of stuff you can use. 100% is not possible to achieve right now, because a few of the standard bits would break already existing functionality. We found websites that run old versions of MooTools, for example, and we cannot use array contains in our JavaScript engine because of this, because it would break old websites. Browser innovation also means don't break the web, because we are not allowed to do that. But we, as developers, broke the web by using things too early. Now, with ES6, we have a clean new slate. And the new baseline is here. I loved that by Kyle Simpson the other day. The new baseline for modern JavaScript competency includes understanding how to effectively use promises generators for async. Up your game. And I don't know, up your game, I think about these like bros drinking beer when I hear that kind of stuff. I'm very allergic to this. You know, I'm like, we're in high school trying to impress each other how much more JavaScript we know. Our JavaScript knowledge should make better products for our end users. That's the main reason. Everything else is a nice to have. Everything else is unnecessary. And if you write better code and faster code by using all these things, good for you. But other than that, as he said like as well, I'm trying to turn over a new leaf where I encourage people to less negativity. I won't fully succeed, but I'm trying. And then like, is this the face of burnout? Because if we up each other all the time, we're like, this is what we have to use, we're burning out. And for nothing. And we're not burning out for creating better things for our end users. We're burning up by trying to up one another who's going to be the best JavaScript developer on this planet. You know, when people come up to me and say like, do you think that guy's better than you? And I'm like, maybe. I don't care. I want to be better tomorrow than I'm today. I'm comparing myself with myself. And then I can overtake anybody else. If I compare myself with other people all the time, I just get frustrated. There's a lot of frustration going on in our market. Controlled environments allow us to use the newest and coolest and find best practices. So if you're using server-side JavaScript and you're running Node, make that work across all platforms. Any Node solution that only works on Mac is terrible. You might as well write native code. And use everything you can find in ES6 that you want to use and use it to the best practice in the right patterns in the Node environment because you control it. For example, VS Code was released yesterday, open source. It's running on Node. So play with that, hack that thing to death, find something cool in there. Atom Editor, we saw that earlier as well. These are the environments where we can play because we control them. This is our stuff. So let's play with the newest and coolest inside of those. But don't play for end users because they cannot use it. Let's not make JavaScript the world overly complex and scary. This is the entrance to my dental office in London. I don't know why I'm going there, but it's really like a horror movie. But you saw that earlier. We shouldn't shock people with what they need to do if they want to write JavaScript. ES6, 7, 2015, 2029 caters to different audiences. Each of these parts are either for syntactic sugar, for the jQuery users, for scalable applications, or for library builders. You don't need to know all of it, and you don't need to feel depressed if you don't know what a symbol means. Because you will not use it if you don't write a library, for example. You will not use it if you don't write a massive application. But you can use templates for the things that make sense to you. Play with it and find out which parts matter to you and start loving those parts. Start kicking the tires of those parts. Start writing good things with those parts rather than just like, oh, I should have used that one as well because people say so. People say a lot of stupid things. Don't listen to people. Babel.js allows you to learn and use it in the now. So that one converts your ES6 to ES5, so it runs everywhere. Performance issue, you don't know what you're controlling, but it's great to learn ES6 right now because you can run it on any device and you see what's actually coming out of it. And you can see what HTML5 or what ES5 gets generated from your ES6. Ponyfu has a great, oh, that's the wrong link. Excellent. An ES6 overview in 350 bullet points. If you really want to have like chunky bits, go there. If you want to read a book, there's Exploring ES6 by Axel Rauschmeier. It's online for free, or it costs like $20 to buy. I was one of the editors. It's an amazing book. It's a really, really beautiful explanation, not only how, but also the why. why were things done in a certain way in ES6 and not like, okay, this is it, you have to use it now. But also let's just calm down a bit and fix and remove what's broken on the web, because there's so many things broken out there. We have 2 megabytes everywhere and 170 things. So what's going on there? Let's fix those as well. Let's analyze and clean up, put the web on a diet, and one to convenient solution at a time. Kill those old libraries because we don't need them any longer. They're just dead weight on the web right now. And lend a helping hand. What I'm doing right now when I'm feeling depressed, I go to GitHub and I look at something that's kind of broken and I fix it. And then I send a request and say like, okay, I fixed this because this is the reasons why I think this is better. You might get a response back, you're not right, that's my code, what the hell. Doesn't matter, you still learn something from it. But you might be lucky and you might get something like me the other day when I'm like, thanks very much for your input advice on making the changes. I learned something new today, I appreciate it, take care. And this feels good, and this is what we should do to each other much, much more, rather than outbidding each other on who's the coolest JavaScript developer of tomorrow and the JavaScript warrior of the world. So let's turn education as competition into education and fun again. And now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. And that's all I had. So thanks very much.
Yeah, hi, Chris. Thanks for your talk. I appreciate it and I agree with everything you speak.
Excellent.
Yeah, and while I agree to it, as team presenter just now as well, that we developers, we also have the tendency of over-engineering things and get late in delivering product and focus too much on maybe performance. And how would you suggest us to balance between these two things?
So the question was how do we stop ourselves from over architecting and from thinking too much about performance? I think you can't think too much about performance if it means the performance of your end users. If it means the thing will run better on the end machine, that's great. Put as much time as you want in there. And I'd rather us work a week longer on a product that is good for our end users than to release it and say like we're the fastest engineers out there. When it comes to over-architecting our things and talking about the future is what I said about we try to predict things of the future that will come. I'd rather have a clean code that is easy to understand than have a very generic code that can deal with every situation out there. Because this generic code will be used to 10% of what it can do in most of the cases. So I think if you find that you're using only a part of what you've written, then you have wasted a lot of time. At the same time, to release it as a JavaScript library and win Hacker News for a day, that makes us excited. Performance is the most important thing in terms of what our end users have. Performance of us as developers, how much code can we churn out in a month, is what made the web so broken right now. It's not about how much code we write, it's how much clever code we write, how much our code does to our end users. And that also means we have to communicate much more with other departments. Where I found ourselves architecting wrongly as well is that we think as developers we have to do everything. I found, for example, paper prototyping in Yahoo made us go through like 5 iterations of a tool before we actually built it. And we spent the time that people spend paper prototyping with end users to write the data APIs instead. So parallel work on different parts of the interface is a very important thing. We can only do that when we start communicating with other parts of our company and not only do everything in engineering. Talking to humans, I know it's scary, but it's a good thing. Something will come out of it.
So kind of you say that we shouldn't focus on like what's the shiny new framework, but if how do you convince companies that even if you don't know framework X, you're a very good developer?
That is a really good question. So companies want you to see the newest and coolest all the time, and they measure the quality of developers that way. And I think that's where the whole hype thing went pear-shaped. In terms of how do you convince companies, you show them how much you really know about the basics. You shouldn't discard new frameworks that you don't need them. You should know what they are, and you should know what use cases they're in. If you come to an interview and they say, like, well, what do you think about React? And you say, like, for this kind of application, that kind of stuff, and that kind of things, it's a really good idea. Whereas most of the time, I would go for this kind of solution because then it performs better. Any hiring manager who has half a brain would be very excited about that answer. So getting found in LinkedIn is a different story, but that's also the jobs that you normally don't get. I think one of my favorite moments was when I hired a JavaScript engineer in Mozilla, in Yahoo back then. We gave people a job, an exercise, a website to build, which is illegal in California, but in England we could do it. And the JavaScript parts of it were kind of tricky. They looked very simple, but they had a few mistakes in them and these kind of things. And the guy who came in had used all the examples from my JavaScript book. And he didn't know that I'm the guy interviewing JavaScript developers. So he came into the room, and he was as white as the wall when I came in. He's like, oh, my God. And I'm like, yeah, and I saw that code, and it kind of looks familiar. And he's like, yeah, it's from your book. I'm like, what didn't you like about my code, and what would you do better? And he explained that. I hired him on the spot. There's no problem using code when you understand it. When you don't understand and you try to impress people by listing 5 different modules and hoping they don't understand it either, then we have a communication problem. So understanding what to use things for is something that more and more companies will look forward to as well when we get less excited about hiring 50 developers because company growth is something that TechCrunch loves.
All right.
Thanks.
I think we can close it here. Big hands for Chris, and thank you so much for coming all the way out here.